Dancing with Fear, Why We Love Being Scared and What It Does to Our Minds. Hello, I am Lee Perry. I am the Pirate Therapist. I am here doing our Halloween episode. I mean, right now, Halloween's not till next week, but the next episode won't be till after, so we're doing it now. So, all of you out there, get your Halloween on. Let's talk about fear. Let's talk about being scared, what it does to our minds, why we like being scared. Have you ever noticed how strange it is that so many of us like to be scared? We line up for horror movies. We tell ghost stories around the fire. We ride roller coasters that make our hearts pound. We even pay money to walk through haunted houses just to be scared, so we scream for 5 minutes and then we fall apart in laughter. Interesting, isn't it? We spend so much of our lives trying to avoid fear, yet we go out of our way to go find it. Why do we do that? What is it about fear that fascinates us so deeply? And what does it do to our mental health? What does it mean for that? Well, what we're exploring today is the strange relationship between our minds, our emotions, and our love affair with being scared. So let's try a little bit to understand fear. To understand our fascination with fear, we first have to understand what fear actually is. Fear is one of the oldest, most powerful emotions we have. It's built into us, it's hardwired by evolution to keep us alive. When our ancestors heard the rustle in the bushes, fear told them that might be dangerous. You better pay attention. Fear sharpens our senses, makes our hearts race, pumps blood into the muscles so we could fight or run. In that sense, fear was never an enemy. Fear was a survival tool, a built-in alarm system that says, hey, something important is happening right now. Stay alert. But here's the thing. The world we live in now is very different from the ones our brains evolved in. Most of us aren't running from predators anymore, yet our brains still react the same way. Whether it's a snake on the trail or a scary movie on Netflix or in the theaters, or even a stressful email at work. Fear floods our bodies with adrenaline and cortisol, which, if you remember, we don't want. We don't like cortisol. It is a stress hormone. It speeds up the heart, it heightens awareness, and prepares us to act. It's an ancient system, but it still works. So, if we look at fear, it makes the heart race, it pumps blood into the muscles, our breathing gets quicker, we flood our body with oxygen. We get a surge of adrenaline. It's the body's way of saying, get ready to fight or flee, although sometimes people freeze too. Because of that reaction, humanity has survived. Fear literally kept us alive. But here's where it gets interesting. Our brains haven't changed as fast as our world has. We don't face saber-toothed tigers anymore. We don't face deadlines, bills, the fear of rejection, sure. The fear of failure, the fear of not being enough. Yet our brains, those modern fears look the same. The same system that once saved us from predators now fires up when somebody doesn't text back, or when we open an email and the subject line is, we need to talk. That's because fear doesn't distinguish between physical and emotional danger. It just knows that something feels threatening. So when fear hits, it activates a part of the brain called the amygdala. And think of it as the body's alarm bell. The amygdala sends signals to release adrenaline and cortisol, stress hormones that flood your system in seconds. Your heart pounds, your blood rushes, your body goes into full alert. Meanwhile, the rational part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, takes a back seat. It's like thinking your brain gets quiet when your survival brain grabs the wheel. That's why fear can feel overwhelming. It's not just a thought, it's a full body takeover. And sometimes that's a good thing. Fear can save you. It makes you hit the brakes when a car cuts you off, or take a step back when something feels off in your gut. But sometimes that same alarm system gets stuck in the on position. It rings when it doesn't need to. It fires when there's no real danger, just a memory or a worry or an imagined scenario. That's when fear stops protecting us and starts controlling us. Before we go there, it's worth saying this. Fear at its core is not, let me say that again, is not the enemy. It's a messenger. It's your body's way of saying something matters to you. Pay attention. Maybe it's fear of losing someone you love that tells you how deeply you care. Maybe it's fear of failing that tells you how much you want to succeed. Maybe it's the fear of the unknown, which, in my opinion, is the biggest fear any of us have. But that fear of the unknown tells you you're standing on the edge of change. If we can learn to listen to fear without letting it lead us, we can find wisdom in it. Because fear doesn't always mean danger. Sometimes it means growth, it means opportunity. Sometimes it just means you're alive. And in this moment, that matters. Fear is the oldest part of us, and maybe, in a strange way, the most honest. It reveals what we value, what we hope for, and what we're afraid to lose. When we start to understand fear, not as something to conquer, but as something to be curious about, it stops being a monster in the dark and starts becoming a teacher that can guide us towards a deeper courage and understanding. Fear whispers not to stop, but to pay attention. The kind of artistic break that helps keep people emotionally engaged. So, if fear feels so intense, why do we seek it out? Why do we like to be scared when we know deep down that we're actually safe? Psychologists have referred to this sometimes as recreational fear. When we experience fear in a controlled environment like a haunted house or a scary movie or an amusement park, our brains get the chemical rush without the real danger. Your brain releases adrenaline, giving you energy and focus. Then it releases dopamine, the reward chemical, when you realize you're safe. Finally, the endorphins, your body's natural painkillers, kick in and leave you with a strange mix of relief and excitement and joy. The cocktail of fear and relief creates a kind of emotional roller coaster. And for many people, it's exhilarating. It's why we laugh after screaming. It's why fear can turn into fun. It's a rush. It's a safe way to feel alive. And in moderation, that can actually be good for us. It's funny when you think about it. Fear is supposed to protect us from danger, but we seek it out. We line up at the haunted houses and scream our lungs out on roller coasters. We love to get scared in horror movies or when we're home alone at night, even when we know we're not going to sleep afterward. Why do we like being scared? It doesn't make a logical sense, but emotionally, it's very, very human. It has been referred to by some as safe fear. It's that rush of adrenaline that you get when your brain says something's happening, but another part of you knows that I'm actually okay. There's nothing wrong. I'm safe. You're scared, but you're safe. You're in control of when that fear starts and when it ends. And the balance between danger and safety gives the brain a thrill like nothing else. When you experience fear, real or imagined, your brain releases adrenaline, dopamine, endorphins. Adrenaline increases alertness, sharpens focus, and it gets your blood pumping. Dopamine gives you pleasure, the same neurotransmitter that fires when you achieve something or feel excitement. The endorphins help you calm down afterward, creating a wave of relief. It's a powerful chemical cocktail, one that can feel almost addictive. That's why people who love scary movies or skydiving often talk about the rush. It's not just emotional, it's biological. Your brain and your body are lighting up in a controlled, simulated version of danger. You get the intensity of fear, the quickened pulse, the edge of your seat feeling, but none of the real risk. Your brain loves that contradiction. It's like the thrill of looking over a cliff while standing behind a sturdy railing. Your body feels the danger, but your mind knows you're safe. This is, in essence, a safe fear. There's a bit more to it than brain chemistry. We're fascinated by fear because it lets us feel alive. In our daily routines, much of life can feel predictable, even numb at times, but fear breaks through that numbness. It kind of shakes us awake. When your heart is pounding and your breath catches, your body is fully here. Every nerve is alert, every sense is alive. For every few moments, you're not thinking about bills, work, or past. You're just there. You're present. You're in the now. In a strange way, fear can become a doorway to mindfulness because it forces you to be in the now. And then when it's over, when the lights come back on or the roller coaster slows, your brain releases relief. You laugh, you exhale. You might even say, let's do it again. That emotional swing from fear to safety, tension to release, it's kind of an emotional cleansing. The word for that is called catharsis. The same concept ancient Greek playwrights used and Shakespeare mastered. It helps audiences confront fear and sorrow safely through the story. When we experience fear in a controlled way, it lets us process emotions we usually avoid: powerlessness, vulnerability, mortality, and transform them into something exhilarating instead of paralyzing. It's kind of an emotional alchemy. There's another layer too. When you face your fear in a safe environment, you're training your brain. You're teaching it, I can feel fear and still be okay. And that is very powerful. Every time you make it through a scary movie, a haunted maze, or a wild ride, your nervous system learns that fear doesn't always mean danger. You build kind of an emotional resilience. This can carry over into real life. When you face job interviews or hard conversations or moments of change, your body remembers. I have felt fear before and I can survive this too. That's one reason some therapists actually recommend a controlled fear exposure in small, safe doses to help people build confidence against anxiety. It's not about loving fear for its own sake. It's about learning to move through it instead of running from it. So let's talk a little bit about the darker side of that fascination. Of course, not all safe fear is healthy. There's a fine line between facing fear for fun and becoming addicted to intensity. Some people chase fear because it's the only way they can feel anything. When you feel you've been emotionally numb or disconnected for a long time, fear can seem like the one emotion that cuts through the fog. But if we start depending on external fear, thrill rides, chaos, or constant crisis, you know anybody like that? I know a few. We can forget how to find emotional depth and calm in the quiet moments, being able to sit quietly and peacefully without the need for talk or television or TikTok, just letting the moment be quiet and calm. When that fear stops being a game and starts becoming a crutch, it's a reminder that real courage isn't about seeking out fear for the rush. It's about facing fears that actually matter, the ones inside of us. Maybe that's why our fascination with being scared runs so deep. It reveals our limits, but also our strength. It reminds us that we're alive, fragile, but capable of courage. Every heartbeat during a scary moment says, I'm still here. And maybe that's the ultimate reason we chase fear. Because somewhere deep down, we want to remember that we can face the darkness and still find our way back to the light. You might be surprised to hear this, but being scared in the right circumstances can actually support our mental health. When we engage in safe, voluntary fear, like a suspenseful story or a thrill ride, or we're giving our nervous system a workout. We're teaching the brain to face intensity and then calm down again. It's like an emotional resilience training. When we face fear on our terms, we learn, I can feel scared and still be okay. That lesson builds confidence. It helps us regulate emotions better in real life. In fact, some psychologists compare watching horror movies to seeking thrill experiences to a form of exposure therapy, where small doses of fear help desensitize us to those anxiety triggers. It also can be why many people with anxiety actually enjoy different types of scary media. It gives them a chance to feel in control of the fear response instead of controlled by it. They can feel it, they can master it, and then they can laugh. And that sense of mastery, of facing something intense and surviving it, can be very powerful. We've talked about how fear is as an instinct, and about the strange thrill of safe fear, that rush that we chase when we know we're really not in danger. But there's another layer, a deeper, more healing side to fear, because when we experience fear in a controlled way, it can actually boost our mental health. That may sound backwards. How can you fear an emotion we usually want to avoid? How can that make us stronger? But the truth is, our relationship with fear shapes almost everything about how we live, grow, and recover. When we expose ourselves to fear in a safe, predictable environment, like a suspense movie or a haunted house, or even a tough workout, our brain goes through a complete cycle: activation, challenge, recovery. In the activation phase, the body releases stress hormones, adrenaline, cortisol, norepinephrine. I can say that word, I swear. You feel your pulse quicken, your breathing changes, your senses sharpen. But then, and this is the key, your brain realizes I'm safe. And that's when the recovery phase begins. The stress chemicals fade and they're replaced with endorphins, dopamine, and oxytocin, the hormones of relief, calm, and connection. It's your body's natural cool down, a biological reset. This is the same pattern that happens in healthy emotional processing. When we face something uncomfortable and come out on the other side, our nervous system learns that I can experience stress and I can recover. That is what mental resilience is. Every time we face controlled fear and come out okay, we train our brain to handle real life stress with a steadier hand. Controlled fear works a bit like exercise for our emotions. You don't grow stronger by avoiding strain. You grow stronger by meeting it in small, safe doses. The same way weightlifting challenges your muscles, controlled fear challenges your emotional tolerance. When you push through the moment of fear, when something small, like watching a scary scene or speaking up in a meeting, you're reminding your brain that fear doesn't mean you're in danger. It just means you're stretching. Over time, that builds what psychologists would refer to as a stress inoculation. It's the mental equivalent of a vaccine. Your brain learns to manage stress before it overwhelms you. People who regularly experience controlled fear through things like rock climbing, acting, public speaking, intense exercise often report higher levels of confidence and a lower baseline anxiety. Not because they never feel fear, but because they've learned how to move through it. One of the most powerful aspects of controlled fear is the word control. When you choose to face fear, you're reclaiming your power from it. You're saying, I decide when and how this happens. That sense of agency is deeply healing, especially for people who felt powerless and overwhelmed. It reminds you that fear does not own you, it only visits. It comes and goes. You are capable of holding it without being swallowed by it. That lesson transfers. Once you faced a fear by choice, whether it's jumping into cold water, standing on a stage, or just trying something new, your brain remembers that courage isn't the absence of fear, it is the willingness to stand in it and keep breathing. This is where emotional healing begins. When we stop trying to erase fear and start trying to learn from it, to ride it, to pass through it. Something fascinating about fear, when it's temporary and safe, can actually help our nervous system reset. After a burst of fear, when your body comes down, your parasympathetic nervous system, your body's calming mechanism, kicks in hard. That drop into relaxation is often deeper than before. And that's why people sometimes describe feeling peace and euphoria after a scary experience, like stepping out of a haunted house or finishing a roller coaster ride. It's the body's way of saying, you made it, you're safe. The psychological release, or rather the physiological release, that sense of relief helps change the stored tension. In a world where we carry chronic low-level stress all the time, that release can be very therapeutic. It's like wringing out your emotional sponge. When done safely and intentionally, facing fear can reset your body's stress response, helping it function more smoothly instead of staying locked in a constant state of alert. When fear becomes chronic, it can damage mental health, leading to anxiety, insomnia, and emotional exhaustion. But when fear is faced in moderation, it can sharpen focus, improve confidence, and deepen our sense of aliveness. The difference isn't the emotion, it's the relationship. Controlled fear gives us a way to befriend fear instead of battling it. To say, you don't have to go away, I just need to know that I'm safe while you're here. That's one of the most powerful lessons in mental health. That emotions, even the uncomfortable ones, can serve a purpose when we meet them with awareness. Fear in small doses can teach courage. It can strengthen self-trust. It can remind us of our ability to feel deeply and recover fully. So maybe it's not about being fearless after all. Maybe it's about learning how to dance with fear, step closer to understanding its rhythm, and know that it doesn't always lead to danger. Sometimes it leads to growth. Sometimes it leads to awe. Sometimes it leads us back to the truth that we are braver, stronger, and more resilient than we thought. When fear is faced with intention, it doesn't just test our limits, it expands them. There is another side to this coin. Fear, when it becomes chronic and uncontrolled, can damage our mental health. When we have or when we live in a constant state of worry, whether it's about the future or our safety or what others think, the body never gets to shut off that alarm system. The cortisol stays high, the sleep gets bad, we feel restless, jumpy, numb. Eventually, the body and the mind start to break down. When fear stops being a teacher and starts becoming a prison, we begin to avoid things that make us feel uncomfortable. We stop taking chances. We shrink our lives in order to stay safe. And the more we avoid, the smaller our world becomes, the more anxiety we feel. That's not the kind of fear that helps us grow. That's the kind that quietly steals our freedom. So while controlled short bursts of fear can be exciting and even healthy, chronic fear, the kind that lingers and whispers and loops in our thoughts, can have very much the opposite effect. It feeds anxiety. It deepens depression. It disconnects us from joy. Fear is part of being human. It's ancient, protective, and necessary. But like any emotion, fear becomes a problem when it stops being temporary, when it stops being a messenger and becomes our constant companion. When the fear stays too long, it doesn't protect us anymore. It starts to limit us. Healthy fear comes and goes. It rises to warn us, then settles down when the threat is past. Unhealthy fear never really leaves. It's the kind that wakes you up in the middle of the night with your heart racing, even when there's nothing wrong. It's the hesitation before sending a text, the avoidance of opportunities. It's the constant what if whispering in your mind. That's when fear shifts from being a survival mechanism to being a state of living. Chronic fear changes how we see the world. It makes us believe there is danger everywhere, even when there isn't. You start scanning for threats that aren't there. In relationships, in work, in your own thoughts, your body stays tense, your heart stays alert, and your nervous system never gets a chance to settle down. It doesn't rest. Over time, that level of vigilance wears you down physically, mentally, and emotionally. So here's what happens biologically. The fear becomes constant. Your brain's amygdala, the alarm system, if you will, becomes hyperactive. It starts sounding the alarm for smaller and smaller things. Meanwhile, your prefrontal cortex, the rational calming part of your brain, starts to weaken its connection. So even when you know logically you're safe, your body doesn't believe you. You live in a constant state of hyperarousal, always on guard, always ready for the next bad thing. And your body keeps paying the price. Chronic fear will give you higher levels of cortisol. That's the stress hormone. Again, we don't want that unless it's necessary. Too much cortisol over time can affect your memory, weaken your immune system, and even impact digestion and sleep. It's why when you're anxious for long stretches, your body often feels like it's falling apart. Headaches, muscle tension, fatigue, stomach issues, sleeplessness. It's not in your head, it's in your nervous system. It's your body begging for rest, for calm, for peace, for safety. Beyond the biology, though, the emotional toll can be even heavier. Chronic fear steals your freedom. It convinces you to play small, to avoid risks, to stay quiet, to stop dreaming. It tells you stories like, you can't do that. You can't handle it. You'll embarrass yourself. You'll get hurt again. And after a while, those stories stop sounding like fear and they start sounding like truth. You begin to believe them. And that belief is what becomes this cage, a cage that holds you trapped. Some people's fear shows up as anxiety. For others, it looks like irritability, control, perfectionism, withdraw, but underneath all of it is the same message. The world is not safe. That's an exhausting way to live. And in the long run, constant fear can lead to burnout, depression, and emotional disconnection because your brain starts numbing itself just to get through the day. Here's something that most people don't realize. Well, maybe not most. A lot of people don't realize. Fear can be self-reinforcing. The more we avoid what we're afraid of, the stronger that fear becomes. Avoidance gives the brain a false sense of relief, so it learns, see, that was dangerous. I was right to stay away. It creates a loop. Fear triggers avoidance, avoidance reinforces fear, and the cycle gets deeper. You kind of spiral deeper and deeper. Breaking this cycle means gently facing that fear again and again, but in safe ways, in ways that you feel like you're capable of handling. We have to unwind that negative spiral and climb back up. But this is where healing begins, facing these fears. We also live in a culture that profits from keeping us afraid. News outlets, social media, even marketing, they've learned that fear grabs attention. It's what keeps us scrolling, keeps us checking and comparing and worrying. The world whispers, be afraid. You're going to miss something, or you're not good enough. And if we're not afraid, we start living in a state of quiet panic, constantly reacting and rarely resting. News media, politicians, they count on this. This is where they thrive, making us all feel unsafe, like we need them in order to get through life. But the truth is, our minds were never built for 24/7 exposure to fear. We're designed for cycles, tension and release, stress and calm. Without those rhythms, we break down. That's why protecting your mental health today means being intentional about what kind of fear you let in, which ones you gently close the door on. So, how do we recognize when fear has taken over? A few signs to look for. You spend a lot of time imagining worst case scenarios. You feel on edge, jumpy, unable to relax even when things are calm. You avoid people, places, or opportunities that used to bring you joy. You have trouble concentrating or making decisions because of what ifs. You feel detached from yourself, like you're surviving but not living. If that sounds familiar, it doesn't mean you're broken. It means your brain's alarm system is stuck in overdrive. That can be reset through therapy, through grounding techniques, mindfulness, simple learning to breathe through discomfort. It's possible to reteach your brain the difference between real danger and false alarms. When fear becomes unhealthy, the goal isn't to destroy it, it's to make peace with it again, to let it serve its purpose without letting it take over your life. That begins with noticing when your body tightens, when your mind spirals, when you say no out of fear instead of truth, and then gently offering yourself safety, not the false safety of avoidance, but the real safety of presence, of acknowledging. That might mean reaching out for help. It might mean grounding yourself in your senses, what you can see, touch, and hear right now. It might mean choosing a slower pace, or it might mean just whispering to yourself, in this moment, I am okay, because that's where the healing is, not in erasing fear, but reminding your body that you're safe now and it can let go. Fear was never meant to rule us, only guide us. It's supposed to rise, warn, and then rest. When it stays too long, it becomes a shadow. But even then, it's still trying in its own way to protect us. The work of healing isn't about silencing fear, it's about teaching it and ourselves how to trust safely again. One of the most powerful things about fear is that it reveals what we value. We fear losing what matters most to us, our loved ones, our sense of safety, our dreams, our identity. In that way, fear is a mirror. It shows us what we care about. So instead of always trying to push fear away, we can learn from it. Ask yourself, what is this fear trying to show me? What am I trying to protect? And what would it look like to trust instead of tighten everything down? Because fear doesn't mean run. Fear means, or should mean, pay attention. It should mean you're standing on the edge of growth. Hopefully, not some kind of saber tooth. I would think not. I guess the odds are never zero, but not likely. We often think of fear as the enemy, something to conquer or silence or hide from. But if you look closer, fear isn't just a warning signal, it's also a mirror. It reveals what matters the most to us. It shows us what we care about, who we love, what we value, and what we're really afraid to lose. It's one of the most honest emotions we have because underneath every fear is something deeply human trying to be protected. Think about it. We fear losing people because we love them. We fear failure because we want to succeed. We fear rejection because connection means a lot to us. We fear death because we value life. So, in a strange way, fear is kind of a map of our heart. It points towards our attachments, our hopes, our sense of meaning. It says, this is what matters to you. If you listen closely, your fear can tell you where your deepest passions live. It can guide you back to what is sacred in your life, not to scare you, but to help you see what you might be overlooking or taking for granted. When we begin to view fear this way, it stops being a villain and starts becoming a truth teller. Fear also shows us where we don't feel safe yet in our world, our relationships, or even inside of ourselves. If you're afraid of speaking up, maybe that fear is pointing to a time when your voice wasn't heard. If you're afraid of being abandoned, maybe that fear remembers an old wound. If you're afraid of change, maybe that fear is guarding the part of you that's tired of being hurt. When fear surfaces, it's not always saying stay away. Sometimes it's whispering, please help me feel safe again. That's powerful because it means that fear isn't about danger, it's about healing. It's about learning where we still need gentleness, where trust has not taken root fully yet. Here's something else that fear reveals: our edges, our boundaries between who we are now and who we are becoming. Every time you feel fear before doing something new, a conversation, a performance, a risk, that's the sound of growth knocking on your door. Fear often shows up in the exact places we're meant to expand: the nervousness before change, the flutter before you share something personal. That's your body saying, this matters, pay attention. If we can reframe that moment to see fear not as a stop sign, but as a signal of possibility, it becomes an ally in transformation. Many people never realize courage doesn't exist without fear. Courage is fear, just met with love and purpose. Fear tells us all about the story we're living. Every time we say, I'm scared I'll fail, what we're really saying is, I'm living in a story where my worth depends on my success. Every time we say, I'm scared they'll leave, we're revealing a story about belonging. Maybe one that says love is fragile, or that we're hard to stay with. Fear reveals the script our subconscious is running. And that's good news, because once you see the story, you can rewrite it. You can change the voice in your head from one of self-protection to one of self-trust. I can handle this to I'm learning to handle this. I'm sorry. Let me say that again. I can't handle this to I'm learning to handle this. From I'm afraid of being alone to I'm learning how to feel whole. Our fears expose the narratives that keep us small, but they also show us we're ready to grow. Finally, and maybe most importantly, fear reminds us that we're human. No matter how much we achieve, how strong or spiritual or logical we think we are, fear brings us back to the same truth. We are vulnerable. We're vulnerable beings trying to make sense of a fragile world. And that vulnerability is not weakness, it's what connects us. Every person you've ever admired has felt fear. Every artist, every leader, parent, or friend has had moments of doubt and trembling. I think that is something that all of us struggle with. It's not it's not a flaw in the design, it is the design. Fear reminds us that we care enough to be affected, that we love enough to worry, that we're alive enough to hope. When we stop running from fear and start listening to it, it stops being a threat and starts being a guide back to our own hearts. So the next time you feel afraid, stop, ask yourself, what is this fear trying to show me? What does this reveal about what I love or what I value? Or what I still need to heal. Because hidden inside of that trembling moment is often a quiet truth that your fear isn't here to break you, that it's here to introduce you to yourself. We live in a time where fear is everywhere, where the news, online, even in the way we talk about the future, it's easy to get caught in the energy and not realize how much it wears us down. My family and I, we got rid of cable TV in 2007. Stopped watching the news constantly. Still heard everything that's important, all the news that we need to hear, we still hear, but the anxiety has come way down. We've been able to relax, to exhale. It's been nice. I haven't missed it. When fear shows up, we need to acknowledge it. It's okay to say, I feel afraid. Naming it calms the amygdala. Breathe through it. Slow breathing signals the body that you're safe. Truth, we should seek truth, not stories. Ask yourself, what is real right now? Fear feeds on the imagination. Truth feeds calm. Take small, brave steps. Each act of courage, no matter how tiny, retrains your brain to trust yourself again. Fear can either close us off or wake us up. It all depends on how we meet it. If it's one thing to talk about fear in theory, to understand it, to analyze it, or even appreciate it. But it's another thing entirely to face it when it's standing right in front of us. When your stomach tightens, your hands shake, your voice catches, when the thought of what might go wrong feels louder than what could go right, that's when all the understanding in the world meets reality. And it's in those moments where fear feels heavy and real, that we discover what we're made of. Because facing fear in real life isn't about being fearless. It's about being willing. It's about looking fear in the eye, about facing these things that scare us. When we picture courage, we often imagine big, dramatic acts, standing up to danger, risking everything, conquering the impossible. But real courage rarely looks like that. Most of the time, it looks like small choices, tiny moments of saying yes when your fear wants you to say no. Courage is showing up to the conversation that you've been avoiding. It's sending the message, applying for a job, or admitting that you're not okay. It's speaking when your voice shakes. It's staying open when your instinct is to hide. Fear thrives on avoidance. Every time we avoid what scares us, we quietly teach our brain that the fear was right, that we cannot handle it. But every time we face it, even in a small way, we prove to ourselves that we can. Those small victories build self-trust. Self-trust, not fearlessness, is what allows us to move through life with confidence and without letting fear control us. One of our simplest and most powerful ways to face fear is to name it. Say it out loud. Write it down. Tell someone you love or you trust, I'm scared of this. It might sound small, but that act takes away fear's secrecy. Fear grows strongest in the silence and the isolation. But once it's broken, it starts to shrink. Naming a fear does not make you weak, it makes you honest. And that honesty is the first step towards freedom. Sometimes simply saying, I'm afraid I'll fail, or I'm afraid they'll judge me, sometimes that gives you enough distance to see that fear for what it is. It's a thought, not a prophecy. One of fear's favorite tricks is to make you feel powerless, as if everything is out of your hands. But part of facing fear is learning to separate what you can control from what you cannot. You cannot control the outcome, but you can control your effort. You cannot control how others respond, but you can control your honesty and your boundaries. You can control your decisions. You cannot control the unknown, but you can control how you face it, with curiosity instead of dread. When we shift our focus from control to choice, fear loses some of its grip. We stop trying to predict every little disaster and start practicing trust in our lives, in ourselves, and in the process of becoming. Another way to face fear in real life is to reframe it, to change the story that you tell yourself about what fear means. Most of us were taught to see fear as a stop sign, but often fear is more of a signpost. It's saying, pay attention here. This is where growth is happening. That nervous energy before a big opportunity, that's your body preparing you to rise to it. That racing heart before a performance, that's your system gearing up to meet the challenge, not to run from it. Try saying to yourself, this isn't fear trying to stop me, it's energy trying to guide me. That reframe can change everything. It turns fear from an obstacle into a signal that you're on the edge of something great. Fear feels heaviest when we carry it alone, but something beautiful happens when we face it with others. Think about it. Horror movies, roller coasters, haunted houses, these are all social experiences. We laugh, we scream, we cling to each other, and we bond through fear. The same thing happens in real life. When we share our fears, we discover that we're not strange or weak, we're human, and we're not alone. Talking about fear in a safe, supportive space, therapy, friendships, support groups, this helps dissolve shame and builds community. It reminds us that fear is universal, but isolation is optional. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do isn't to stand alone, but to reach out and say, Can you stand with me while I face this? Every time we face fear and come out on the other side, something profound happens. We trust ourselves a little bit more. We learn that we can survive discomfort. The fear can come and go, but we remain standing. We're not as fragile as we once thought. This kind of trust changes everything, not just how we handle fear, but how we approach life. You begin to walk with quiet confidence, knowing that no matter what comes, you have what it takes to meet it. You may not always feel ready, but you're capable, and that's enough. So if you're facing fear right now, maybe it's a big decision or a loss or a step into the unknown, remember this. You don't have to get rid of fear. You just have to keep moving with it. Move through it. You can feel afraid and still take the next step. You can tremble and still tell the truth. You can doubt yourself and still choose courage. Fear may visit, but it doesn't have to stay. It can walk beside you and it can whisper its worries while you keep walking towards something bigger. Your healing, your growth, your becoming, the greatness that you stand on the precipice of. Because facing fear in real life isn't about never being scared. It's about never letting fear have the final say. Here's something beautiful. Fear and wonder are closer than we think. Both make us pause. Both make our hearts race. Both remind us that we are alive. Fear, when transformed, becomes awe. That rush you feel when you look over a cliff or stand before a thunderstorm. That's fear and wonder blending together. The body saying, this is big, and I get to be a part of it. Maybe that's why we chase fear. Not to be frightened, but to feel awake, to remember that we're capable of feeling deeply. When we face fear safely, we rediscover something essential, the thrill of being human, the pulse of life itself. Something fascinating about fear and excitement. Your body actually doesn't know the difference between fear and excitement. The racing heart, the sweaty palms, the butterflies in your stomach. They're almost identical in both emotions. The only difference is the story you tell yourself in your mind about what's happening. When you say, I'm scared, your body prepares to retreat. When you say, I'm excited, your body prepares to engage. The physical reaction is the same, but it's the meaning that we attach that changes everything. When you feel fear, your brain activates the amygdala, the part responsible for fight or flight or freeze. Adrenaline floods your system, your heart beats faster, blood flows, your focus narrows. But when you label that same sensation as excitement, you activate different parts of your brain, regions tied to motivation, curiosity, and reward. You haven't changed your body's chemistry, just your interpretation of it. And that simple reframe rewires how you experience the moment. Instead of seeing it as a threat, your brain starts seeing it as an opportunity. Imagine this. If you're about to step on a stage or have a difficult conversation or just take a leap into something new, your body tightens, your heart races, that familiar surge of fear. But what if instead of saying I'm nervous, you said I'm excited? You're not denying the feeling. You're simply choosing a more empowering story. That's what athletes, performers, astronauts, this is what they do before all of these high stakes moments. They don't tell themselves to calm down. They reframe it. They think my body is getting ready. This energy means I'm capable. My body is preparing to help me meet this challenge. This is important and this matters to me. That reframe turns anxiety into readiness and panic into power. Words matter more than we realize. When we name an emotion, we give it a direction. Saying I'm scared makes us want to back away. Saying I'm excited encourages us to engage. Fear says I might fail. Excitement says I might succeed. Fear says something bad could happen. Excitement says this could be awesome. Both acknowledge uncertainty, but one freezes you and the other one fuels you. The more often you practice that shift in language, the more your brain learns to interpret adrenaline as a motivation instead of a danger. It's not pretending, it's retraining. In many ways, this emotional alchemy, if you will, the art of transforming one feeling into another without denying either one. You're not erasing fear, you're redirecting its energy. You're taking the same current that could have powered the panic, and you're using it to power and spark courage. That's why you often hear people say, I was terrified, but I did it anyway, and it felt great. That amazing feeling isn't the absence of fear, it's fear converted into excitement. It's the emotional equivalent of turning friction into momentum. When fear controls your narrative, life starts to feel small. You avoid risks, new experiences, change, sometimes even joy, because joy can be too unpredictable. But when you practice reframing fear as excitement, your world begins to open up again. You start saying yes more often. You begin to welcome the unknown as a source of discovery instead of danger. And that sense of openness strengthens your resilience and your emotional flexibility. Each time you reinterpret fear, you're teaching your brain that new things are not always threats. Sometimes they can be adventures. That reduces chronic anxiety, it boosts your confidence, and it makes you feel a little more alive. I would like you to start practicing this kind of shift in your everyday life. Look for signs of fear, the racing heart, the tension, the overthinking. Pause and notice without judgment what is happening. Instead of saying I'm nervous, say I'm excited. And if you don't fully believe it yet, say it out loud. Tell somebody next to you. Ask yourself, why does this matter to me? Fear usually shows up where meaning lives. Breathe, lean into it. Let the energy move through you instead of trying to shut it down. Remember, it's not danger, it's readiness. This isn't about pretending fear is fun. It's about remembering that fear and excitement are neighbors, and you get to choose which door to knock on. What if the next time fear pops up in your head, instead of pulling away, you lean and whisper, I'm excited to see what happens next? What would shift in your life if you saw every moment of uncertainty as a chance to grow, not a reason to retreat? Fear and excitement will always travel together. They share the same road, but it's your perspective. It's that story that you tell yourself that decides whether the road leads to paralysis or possibility and adventure. So the next time you feel your heart race, your palms sweat, your breath quicken, smile. Opportunity is there. That's your body saying that you're alive. Something new is going to start. Okay, so we've talked for a little while about exploring fear and what it is and what it does and how it shapes us and how it can even help us. But I want to end with something simple and human because the truth is, no matter how much we understand fear, it's never going to disappear. And that's okay. The goal is not to get rid of it, it's to learn how to live with it, not let it run our lives. Fear isn't the enemy, it's part of the human experience like joy and love and sadness. It's our internal guardian. Sometimes it may be overprotective, sometimes wise, sometimes confused. When we fight it, it grows stronger. But when we acknowledge it, it softens. Think of fear as a passenger in your car. You don't want it driving, but you don't have to throw it out either. You can say, all right, fear, I see you. Sit back in the seat, put your seatbelt on. I'm the one driving. That simple act, acknowledging fear, but not surrendering control, creates balance. You stop wasting energy trying to silence it and start focusing on living with it, living in spite of it. Fear's job is to keep us safe, to keep us alive. Those two forces are always in conversation: safety and expansion, comfort, courage. We need both. If we only listen to fear, we stop evolving. If we ignore it completely, we take we take reckless risks that harm us. Balance means listening, really listening to what fear is saying without automatically believing it. Ask yourself, is this fear protecting me or is it preventing me? Sometimes it's wise fear, warning you of danger. Other times it's protective fear, trying to stop you from feeling discomfort. When you can learn to tell the difference, you gain freedom. You can choose when to step forward and when to step back, not from fear, but from clarity. Living with fear also means practicing kindness towards yourself because facing fear takes energy. It takes vulnerability. That's scary. And sometimes it's 2 steps forward and 1 step back, and that's okay. When fear shows up, instead of criticizing yourself for feeling it, try offering compassion. Say to yourself, of course I'm afraid. This matters to me. That simple acknowledgement changes the tone of the moment. Self-compassion doesn't make you weak. It creates an emotional safety you need to move through the fear instead of being paralyzed by it. When you feel safe with yourself, fear loses a lot of its power. Sometimes the best way for balance for balancing fear isn't through thinking, it's through grounding. When fear spins in your mind, bring your focus back to your body. Bring yourself back to the now. Breathe deep and slow. It signals your nervous system that you're safe. Feel your feet on the ground. Remind yourself, I'm right here. It's okay. One common way of grounding is to name 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, so on and so on. It's a simple way to anchor yourself to the here and now. Fear thrives on imagination, on what might happen, on what if, on what could be. Grounding roots you back to the present, right here, right now. The truth is, fear isn't going to go away, but you can change your relationship with it. Instead of a storm that knocks you over, it can become a shadow that walks beside you, a reminder that you're alive, that you care, that you're still moving forward, that you're progressing. You don't have to be fearless to live a full, brave life. You just have to be present, to feel fear, to still reach out, to feel fear, still love, to feel fear and still hope. That's courage. That's balance. That is being human. So as you go about your week, notice where fear shows up, and instead of running from it, try sitting with it. Ask it what it's trying to protect. Thank it for caring. Then remind it who's in charge. Because living with fear isn't about eliminating it, it's about walking alongside it with grace. You can carry fear and still move towards joy. You can carry fear and still chase dreams. You can carry fear and still belong, still love, and still live fully. Because fear will always whisper, but you get to decide what story you're going to tell next. I would like to end this week's session by reading you one of the most powerful quotes, one of my favorite quotes, and it is from Dune by Frank Herbert. And I'm going to leave you with that. I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over me and through me. And when it has gone past, I will turn the inner eye to see its path. Where fear has gone, there will be nothing. Only I will remain. So for now, thank you very much for joining me. It's been a pleasure doing this episode with you. Thank you for listening. If you know anybody that might benefit from this or might even just enjoy it, please introduce them to it. Feel free to share these. They're free. They're on YouTube. I would love to have people ask me questions or perhaps do some podcast ideas. So if you have any, please let me know. My email is linked to my channel. So thank you. So for this week, you all have a wonderful week. Have a happy Halloween. Go get scared, but do it safely. And remember, you're in charge, you're awesome, and you matter. Face something. Look at your fear. Walk with it. I'll see you next week. Bye.